Imagine you finally close on a stunning, fully furnished historic home. Like, it has hand-carved mahogany doors, vintage wallpaper, just absolute architectural perfection.
Oh, that sounds incredible.
Right. It's a dream. But then you look behind the walls and you realize the house has ancient, exposed knob and tube electrical wiring.
Ah, so a literal ticking time bomb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead of calling an electrician to, bring it up to modern safety standards, you just kind of shrug.
You just ignore it.
Yeah. You tell your family, well, that is how the previous owners lived, so it's good enough for us.
I mean, you would obviously never do that with your physical safety.
Never. Yet every single day we do exactly that with the foundational rules of our society.
We really do. We treat things like governance, economics, and our legal frameworks as these sacred heirlooms rather than functional technology.
Which is wild when you actually stop and think about it.
It is. And that tension, that exact contradiction, is at the heart of the source material we're diving into today.
Yes, welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are exploring a rather profound philosophical text today.
We are. It's built around this fascinating dialogue between two characters, Nick and Maya.
Right, and they are trying to unravel a series of these massive existential questions.
Posed to them by this mysterious figure known only as the time traveler.
Which is such a cool premise. The text uses this narrative framing to basically force us into a corner, intellectually speaking.
Yeah, it doesn't let you off the hook. Nick and Maya, they stun the dialogue wrestling with power, money, and corruption.
But it all really funnels down to one ultimate paradigm-shifting question, which is, what kind of civilization are we actually trying to build?
Right. It forces you to look at the literal mechanics of human progress.
So where do we start with a question that huge?
Well, to answer what kind of civilization we should build, Maya points out that we first have to deconstruct the one we currently occupy.
Okay, that makes sense.
She makes this really sharp observation that every single generation is born into a world they did not create.
Oh, wow.
Right. We inherit the entire operating system of society. I'm talking about our languages, our laws, cultural norms, and these massive, incredibly complex economic systems.
We just wake up one day and accept the terms and conditions of reality without reading them.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Like scrolling right to the bottom and clicking agree.
Exactly. Most of us accept this operating system without ever asking if these frameworks were designed using the best knowledge available to us today.
Or, are we just cruising along on slight incremental improvements to ideas that were cooked up centuries ago?
By people who knew a fraction of what we know now.
Yes.
And the text frames this dilemma through what it calls the blank slate theory.
Okay, let's unpack this, because usually when people hear blank slate, they think of behavioral psychology.
Right, the whole nature versus nurture debate.
Yeah, the idea that humans are born with no innate traits. But the text is using it a bit differently here regarding societal structures, right?
It is. It's using it structurally. What's fascinating here is the idea that while we are inevitably born into systems we didn't choose, human beings uniquely possess the capacity to examine those very systems from the outside.
We can step back and look at what we're doing.
Exactly. We aren't bound by instinct to just replicate the anthill exactly as a last generation built it.
So we aren't just like biological robots following a script.
No, not at all. We can step back, look at the anthill and say, hey, this design is actually incredibly inefficient and causing a lot of unnecessary suffering.
We can look at the bad wiring in the historic house.
And we can choose to rip it out.
Right.
But the tragedy, as the text emphasizes, is when we refuse to do so simply because the wiring is old.
We just worship tradition for tradition's sake.
Yeah, rather than asking if those traditions are still structurally sound.
Which is honestly terrifying.
It is. Because refusing to change our societal structures when we have better, more accurate data isn't a show of cultural strength. It is intellectual stagnation.
Think about the corporate structure at your own job, or
Yeah.
the traditions in your own family.
So much of it is on autopilot.
Right. How many processes do you follow strictly because, well, that's just how management set it up 10 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. It takes a massive amount of cognitive friction to stop and actually ask why.
Which brings up Nick's alternative in the text. If blindly accepting the furnished house with the bad wiring is the problem, his solution is applying the scientific method to civilization itself.
And that is a massive conceptual pivot.
It really is.
Nick asks us to contrast the stagnation of our societal systems with the relentless progression of science.
Okay, and what's the fundamental difference there?
Humility.
Oh.
Science never claims perfection.
Mm,
The moment a researcher declares they have found the final, unchangeable truth, they are no longer doing science. They are doing dogma.
right, because the engine of progress is revision.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to be wrong. But let's move past the basic definition of science, because I think everyone listening understands that theories change with new evidence.
Sure.
The friction here, the real meat of this idea, is what happens when you try to apply that to law.
Yes. That's where it gets complicated.
Because lawmakers do not act like scientists. Currently, our politicians aren't electricians trying to fix the wiring.
What are they then?
They are interior decorators arguing over the color of the curtains while the walls are literally smoking.
That captures the dysfunction perfectly. I mean, it's so true.
It's exhausting to watch.
It is. But the dialogue imagines a society that operates differently. It refers to it as the infallible society.
Okay, wait. Infallible usually implies perfection, right? Like incapable of making a mistake.
Right, but the text redefines it. An infallible society doesn't begin with rigid conclusions. It begins with questions.
Oh, interesting.
It is a society that tests, measures, and is structurally incapable of failing to learn.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I want you to walk us through the mechanism of that. Okay, let's do it.
Because in our current reality, a policy gets passed, and it becomes deeply tied to the political identity of whoever proposed it.
So deeply tied.
Yeah, so if the policy fails, abandoning it is seen as this massive, humiliating defeat for that whole side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In our current setup, admitting a policy failed is basically political suicide.
Which means we just keep doing the bad policy.
Right. But in the infallible society that Nick proposes, you would treat governance like a clinical trial.
Okay, so how would that look in practice?
Imagine applying the latest knowledge from neuroscience, behavioral psychology, and systems engineering to a new education policy.
So using actual data.
Yes.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just roll it out nationwide based on ideological fervor. You would test it.
Like a pilot program.
Exactly. You would gather data on student well-being, information retention, and teacher burnout.
And if the data shows the policy is actually harming people.
You abandon it immediately.
And crucially, this is the most important part. There is no societal shame in abandoning it, regardless of whose political team proposed it.
Because the goal wasn't to prove a politician right.
No. The goal was to find out what actually works.
That shift is staggering when you really think about it.
It changes everything.
It completely eliminates the exhausting perpetual argument of who is right or, which ideology should win that dominates our entire media landscape.
It really does. It replaces ego with empathy and observation.
So the focus shifts entirely to investigation.
Yes. The guiding question of this new civilization just becomes, what produces the greatest well-being for the greatest number of people?
Without sacrificing justice, freedom, or human dignity, of course.
Of course, that's the baseline.
But wait, I have to jump in here and play devil's advocate on behalf of human nature.
Go for it.
Nick is outlining a beautifully rational society. But we both know humans are not perfectly rational actors.
Far from it.
We panic. We are deeply tribal. And Maya actually pushes back on Nick with this exact point in the text, doesn't she?
She does. It's a very realistic pushback.
Because if you are constantly tearing up the floorboards to fix the wiring, if every generation is running clinical trials on the foundations of society, won't we just collapse into total chaos?
People crave stability. It
Yeah.
is the most natural objection in the world, and Maya voices it brilliantly.
Right, because nobody wants to feel like the rules are changing every 5 minutes.
Exactly. The fear is that constant questioning equals instability. But Nick counters this by drawing a critical distinction between destruction and improvement.
Okay, how does he explain that?
He uses some very grounding analogies here. Think about an engineer relentlessly questioning the design of a bridge.
Okay,
They test it for flaws, they run computer simulations to find its breaking point.
but they don't do this to destroy the bridge.
Right. They do it to ensure it can withstand a hurricane.
Ah, I see. It's like how a doctor questions medical practices to improve treatment, not to abolish medicine.
Exactly. The goal of continuous questioning isn't chaos. It is deliberate evolution.
That makes a lot of sense when you frame it that way.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text actually draws a direct parallel to how nature operates.
Oh, like biological evolution.
Yes. Evolution doesn't throw away the biological body and start from scratch every generation.
It doesn't just scrap the whole project.
No, it modifies. It keeps the traits that work for survival and slowly phases out the ones that no longer serve the organism in its changing environment.
It adapts to the data of the environment.
Yes. Civilization can do the exact same thing. We do not need endless, bloody revolutions to create change.
And we do not need stubborn, unyielding tradition to maintain stability.
Exactly. We need thoughtful, evidence-based adaptation. And the text points out that we literally possess the biological hardware to achieve this.
Yes, specifically highlighting the prefrontal cortex. I've found this part of the source material so fascinating.
It's brilliant because it bridges abstract philosophy with hard biology.
Right. So explain the prefrontal cortex part for us.
Well, the prefrontal cortex is the seat of human reasoning. It handles complex problem-solving, impulse control, and long-term planning.
It's the rational part of the brain.
Yes. It is what separates us from creatures that simply react blindly to immediate threats. It gives us the biological capacity to plan a future that does not yet exist.
Okay, but let's look at the reality of how we use that hardware.
Fair point.
We have this highly evolved prefrontal cortex, sure. Yet, if you look at our inherited systems today, we constantly revert to our amygdala.
Our reactionary reptilian brain.
Exactly. Our social media algorithms, our 24-hour news cycles, our hyperpartisan elections, they are all practically designed to bypass the prefrontal cortex and trigger fear and tribal.
It's a constant state of fight or flight.
So what does this all mean? If Nick's scientific civilization is going to survive human nature, how do we actually measure success?
That is the crucial question.
Because right now, the only metric our inherited system seems to care about is GDP. Did the economy grow?
And that reliance on GDP is the exact trap the text warns against. Well, GDP just measures transaction volume. It measures money moving.
Right.
If crime skyrockets and everyone has to buy expensive security systems and hire private guards, the GDP actually goes up.
But the society is objectively worse off.
Exactly.
The walls are smoking, but we are spending money on fire extinguishers, so the economy looks great on paper.
That is precisely the problem. The text argues that a living, learning civilization must abandon these narrow economic indicators.
We need better metrics.
We need a much more holistic set of metrics to determine if the prefrontal cortex is actually winning out over the amygdala.
Let's unpack those new metrics because they fundamentally change what a society values.
They really do.
Nick suggests that success should first and foremost be measured by trust.
Trust is a fascinating metric because it functions as this massive economic and societal engine.
How does trust act as an engine?
Think about the friction in a society with zero trust. If neighbors do not trust one another, if citizens believe their institutions are deeply corrupt.
Oh, I see. Every single interaction becomes incredibly expensive.
Yes. You need more lawyers, more contracts, more enforcement, more security.
Everything moves slower and costs more.
But in a high-trust society, that friction vanishes. People collaborate more freely, innovation accelerates, and resources aren't wasted on merely protecting oneself from one's neighbors.
That is so profound. He also lists health, knowledge, creativity, and environmental sustainability as core metrics.
Yes.
That last one seems particularly vital because a society that liquidates its own natural habitat for short-term profit is objectively failing.
Regardless of how much wealth it generates in the process.
Right, because you can't eat the money.
He also includes mental well-being, opportunity, justice, and the ability of future generations to live better lives than we do today.
And that right there is the ultimate gut punch. Are we leaving a structurally sound house for the next tenants?
Or are we just maximizing our own comfort while the foundation cracks beneath us?
But adopting these holistic metrics raises a massive philosophical dilemma for me.
Wait, what is it?
Well, if we optimize everything, if we constantly adapt our laws based on evidence to maximize trust and health and sustainability, what is the finish line? Are we trying to engineer a flawless utopia where nobody ever suffers?
This raises an important question, and this is where the dialogue takes its most brilliant turn.
Okay.
It actively dismantles the concept of societal perfection.
Really? So it's not about building a utopia?
Not at all. Throughout human history, whether it's religious dogma or extreme political ideologies, we have constantly been sold the promise of perfection.
Right. A golden age, a utopia, an end of history if we just follow a specific set of rules.
Yes. We are addicted to the idea of a savior.
Whether it's a perfect leader or a flawless constitution that will solve all our problems in perpetuity.
But the text argues that perfection is a dangerous myth.
Why dangerous?
Because it implies an end state where no more learning is required.
Oh, wow.
Once you believe your society is perfect, any new evidence that contradicts that belief must be destroyed or ignored.
Because it threatens the illusion of perfection.
Exactly. Civilization was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to become endlessly better, one discovery and one iteration at a time.
This recontextualizes that word infallible we discussed earlier.
That does.
Maya has this moment of clarity in the text where she realizes the true vision behind the infallible society isn't a promise that humanity will never make a mistake again.
No, not at all. It is a commitment that humanity will never stop learning from the mistakes it inevitably makes.
Because complex systems will always have unintended consequences.
Always. The true opposite of an infallible society is not a society that fails.
What is it?
It is a society that stubbornly keeps repeating the exact same failures over and over, even after it fully understands the mechanics of why they are happening.
Which is, sadly, a painfully accurate description of so much of our current reality.
It really is.
We have mountains of data showing that certain criminal justice policies or economic structures cause systemic harm.
We know why they fail.
Right. But we keep doing them because of tradition, or political gridlock, or just pure stubbornness.
We choose the comfort of the familiar over the friction of the better.
Which brings us to the time traveler's profound final contribution in this section of the text.
Yes, this is a really powerful moment.
Historically, if you look back at how the world has been shaped, the future has almost always been dictated by those who possess the greatest wealth or the greatest capacity for violence.
It has been a story of brute force.
Yeah. But this dialogue challenges us to imagine a completely different driver of history.
It challenges us to imagine a future shaped by those who have the courage to ask better questions.
And the humility to change when better answers are found.
Courage and humility, those are the two psychological traits required to build this kind of civilization.
It's not about being the smartest or the strongest.
No. You need the courage to look at the inherited system, to stare directly at the old sparking wiring in the walls, and risk the discomfort of asking if it is safe.
And then you need the extreme humility to admit when an idea or a tradition you held dear is no longer supported by the evidence.
It requires a massive cultural ego death.
That is perfectly said. Maya concludes that the ultimate question for citizens is no longer, what should we believe?
Because that implies a static, unmoving truth.
Right. The new question, the one that changes the entire trajectory of a society, is, are we willing to keep asking whether what we believe is still true?
It requires a continuous, active engagement with reality. You are no longer a passive passenger on the train of history.
You are in the engine room, constantly checking the dials.
Exact.
Let's zoom out and look at the whole journey Nick and Maya took us on today.
It's been quite a ride.
It really has. We started with this unsettling realization that we are passive inheritors of outdated systems.
Living in a house with dangerous wiring just because it was there when we moved in.
Yeah. And the text provided a blueprint for becoming active architects of a living, learning civilization.
It asks us to trade the toxic, exhausting battle of political ideologies for a relentless, compassionate investigation of what actually works to improve human well-being.
It is an incredibly hopeful vision for the future, honestly.
It is. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a somewhat provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, I love these. Lay it on us.
Building on the implications of Nick and Maya's dialogue, if we actually succeed in building this evolving society.
A society that relentlessly sheds its outdated traditions the moment new evidence proves them harmful.
Yes. If we do that, what happens to our sense of cultural and personal identity?
Oh, wow. That is a heavy implication.
Think about it. So much of human identity is currently wrapped up in the very traditions we've inherited.
Our political affiliations, our national myths, our regional customs.
Right. They give us a deep sense of belonging.
They anchor us.
So if who we are is no longer rooted in ancient, unchanging traditions, will we have to completely redefine human identity as something inherently fluid?
Can a society find a deep, stabilizing sense of belonging purely in the shared pursuit of learning?
Exactly. Rather than in the shared worship of its past.
Can our identity be based on where we are going rather than where we came from? That is a fascinating challenge to the human psyche.
It fundamentally changes what it means to be human.
It does. As you head out into your day, I want you to think about that historic house you were living in.
Look around at the structures of your own life.
What inherited system, whether it's a process at your job, a dynamic in your family, or, one of your own deeply held personal beliefs, have you just accepted without ever questioning the wiring?
Because we all have them.
We do. And the really haunting question is, if the entire history of scientific progress proves that admitting you were wrong makes you stronger. Why is it so hard for us to do the same with our society?
And what are you so afraid of losing if you finally do?
A powerful thought to carry with you. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Keep asking those better questions.